On the 7th of October 2023, Hamas perpetrated the worst massacre in Israel's history. Every day since then, the horror has continued. The hostages are still being held today. The Palestinian people have endured terrible suffering. Now, in Gaza, because of a catastrophic failure of aid, we see starving babies, children too weak to stand, images that will stay with us for a lifetime. The suffering must end. Yesterday I discussed this with President Trump, and we're mounting a major effort to get humanitarian supplies back in by air, and UK aid has been airdropped into Gaza today, and crucially by land. We need to see at least 500 trucks entering Gaza every day. But ultimately, the only way to bring this humanitarian crisis to an end is through a long-term settlement. So we are supporting the US, Egyptian and Qatari efforts to secure a vital ceasefire. That ceasefire must be sustainable, and it must lead to a wider peace plan, which we're developing with our international partners. This plan will deliver security and proper governance in Gaza and pave the way for negotiations on a two-state solution. Our goal remains a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable and sovereign Palestinian state. But right now, that goal is under pressure like never before. I've always said that we will recognise a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution. With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank. Meanwhile, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all of the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza. And we'll make an assessment in September on how far the parties have met these steps. But no one should have a veto over our decision. So this is the way forward. We will keep working with all our international partners to end the suffering, get aid flooding into Gaza, and deliver a more stable future for the Middle East. Because I know that is what the British people desperately want to see. Thank you. I'll take some questions. John.
Prime Minister, two issues here, obviously the aid and also the recognition of Palestine. First of all, on aid, what assurances did you receive from President Trump that he will use his influence with Prime Minister Netanyahu to allow the aid that you've talked about, the aid going in by trucks as well as by air? What assurance did you receive from him? He sounded as though, when he talked about every ounce of food going in, and you can't fake the pictures that we've seen on TV. Tell me about the reassurances you've heard, the promises, pledges from President Trump. And on the recognition issue, you do appear to have moved your position from as recently as last week, really, where you were talking about various other measures. I'm wondering what has influenced you into making what looks like a U-turn here on this issue? Is it pressure from the 250 or so MPs, most of whom are Labour? Is it pressure from inside your cabinet? We hear there are 7 cabinet ministers pressing you to push for recognising Palestine. Or is it President Macron, who of course lobbied you? He talked about it last Thursday about recognising the Palestine also at the UN General Assembly. And what difference do you think actually recognising Palestine will actually make in practical terms?
Thank you for those questions. Firstly, on the question of aid, I won't go into the discussions I had with President Trump yesterday. We had a long session in private. And we discussed the situation in Gaza, and you heard the way the President then put it in the press conference that we held afterwards. And I think you could see for yourself his concern about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, as is my concern, because we've been saying for some considerable time now we need to get more aid in at volume and at speed, and the situation now is absolutely catastrophic, which is why I've taken this decision today. In relation to the two-state solution and the recognition of Palestine, this has been long-standing Labour Party policy. It was in our manifesto. We talked about the right of the Palestinians to recognition, and we've always said that would be part of the process. And that it would be an important part of the point that we thought it would have maximum impact. It's driven today by 2 things. Firstly, the context in the intolerable situation in Gaza, which is getting worse by the day, but also because of the concern that the very possibility of a 2-state solution is reducing, and therefore it is very important to be seen in that context as a very important contribution to what I hope will be an alleviation of the situation on the ground, because I'm acutely aware that what needs to happen urgently is that aid into Gaza at speed and at volume, and that ceasefire that can open the way for a political process. So this is a decision taken by this government in the context of today, and after a meeting with my cabinet just earlier this afternoon. On the question of the difference it will make, the reason we have announced this in the way we have in relation to the General Assembly in September is precisely because I want to ensure that this plays a part in changing the conditions on the ground, and making sure that that aid gets in, making sure that there is hope of a 2-state solution for the future, and therefore I've always been interested in what is going to make a material difference, how can we work with our allies most effectively, and that's why this comes as a part of a peace plan that we've been working on for some considerable time, an 8-part plan, which I've already spoken to Germany and France about, and many other countries. So this should be in the context of answering the question, yes, how do you get humanitarian aid in at speed and at volume, but also what happens the day after a much-needed ceasefire so that we can get to a long-term peaceful outcome. And I think that that is the context in which you should see the decision that I've made today. Can I go to David, PA, please? David.
Yeah, thanks very much, Prime Minister. David Lynch from PA. In your statement just now, you've said that the UK will recognise the state of Palestine unless Israel takes steps to end the situation in Gaza and reach a ceasefire. That sounds like our recognition of Palestine is conditional. Why is that? And how confident are you that a ceasefire can be reached by September? Well,
the primary aim here is to change the situation on the ground for people who desperately need change. We need a ceasefire. We need always to keep in our mind the hostages and the atrocity of October the 7th, and they must be immediately released. They've been held a very, very long time. But also we need, alongside that, to ensure that we get aid in at volume and in speed into Gaza, because the situation is simply intolerable. And this is intended to further that cause, and it is done now because I am particularly concerned that the very idea of a two-state solution is reducing and feels further away today than it has for many, many years, and therefore it should be seen in both of those contexts. Thank you both very much indeed.